Hello all, welcome to the next session on storage area networks. In this video session, we'll be discussing module 3 of our syllabus, or we'll be discussing the next module of our syllabus, that is module 3, where we'll be discussing what do you mean by business continuity, what do you mean by backup, what do you mean by local replication, remote replication, and so on. There are basically 4 chapters. So, introduction to business continuity, this will be the first chapter that we are going to discuss as a part of module 3. Now this chapter, it consists of the definition to business continuity. We'll be learning the different terms such as the downtime, uptime, and so on. We'll be discussing the different business continuity terminologies. We'll also discuss how to measure information availability. So after that, we'll be discussing something called as the business continuity planning life cycle, and we are also going to learn a bit of failure analysis. How can we mitigate the failure in the systems so as to offer the best business continuity options? And at the end, we'll also discuss some of the business continuity technology solutions. So let us begin with this chapter, Introduction to Business Continuity. Before proceeding, let us try to define what is business continuity. Business continuity is an integrated and enterprise-wide process that includes all the activities that a business must perform to mitigate the impact of planned and unplanned downtime. Okay, let me just reframe it. So business continuity is an integrated and enterprise-wide process that includes all the activities, both internal and external activities, that a business must perform to mitigate the impact of planned and unplanned downtime. So the basic purpose of business continuity is ensuring non-disruption, or ensuring disruption-free environment to the business operations. That is what we call as business continuity. So what is business continuity? So business continuity is preparing to, or it's preparing for, responding to, and recovering from an application outage that adversely affects the business operations. So business continuity solutions address unavailability and degraded application performance. Business continuity is an integrated and enterprise-wide process that includes all activities that a business must perform to mitigate the impact of planned and unplanned downtime. So business continuity is preparing for, responding to, and recovering from an application outage that adversely affects the business operations. So we don't want to disrupt any business operations. The business's operations should go on without any disruption. So in order to have non-disruptive business operations, we implement this concept of business continuity. That is, we need to prepare for any application outage. We should be able to respond to if in case there was some outage, and how to recover from an application outage. So all these things is a part of business continuity solution. It addresses the unavailability and degraded application performance. If the application is response time is very large, if the application slows down, there has to be some solution where we can improve the application performance. Or there may be some times when the data is not available, or the applications may not be available to the users when it is required. So again, solving such issues is a part of business continuity. Hence, business continuity is an integrated and enterprise-wide process that includes all activities that a business must perform to mitigate the impact of planned and unplanned downtime. So planned downtime may be routine maintenance, upgradation of the softwares, upgradation of the hardware infrastructure. So when this upgradation takes place, or when maintenance takes place, the data or the applications may not be available. That is called as planned downtime, because it is planned in advance. So what do we mean by unplanned downtime? Unplanned downtime may be unexpected power failure, or some natural disaster that may have occurred at the data center. So all these contribute to unplanned downtime. So how to mitigate the impact of planned and unplanned downtime is a part of the business continuity. How to minimize the losses to the business is the thing that we need to address as a part of business continuity solutions. The goal of a business continuity solution is to ensure information availability required to conduct business operations. The main goal of business continuity solution is to ensure the information availability. We need to ensure that the information is rightly available or readily available whenever it is required. They say information is the new oil. All the businesses, they rely on the information. Only if they have the up-to-date information, the latest information, the businesses can perform their normal operations. So ensuring information availability is the main goal of business continuity solution. Now this information availability that is required to conduct the vital business operations. So ensuring this information availability is the main goal of a business continuity solution. Now let us try to understand the new term. What is information availability? Okay. Information availability refers to the ability of an IT infrastructure to function according to the business expectations during its specified time of operation. Right? So information availability, we use a symbol called as IA. So it refers to the ability of an infrastructure to function according to the business expectations during its specified time of operations. So whenever the business is running, during the time of operation of the business, if the infrastructure is able to meet the business expectations, we call it as information availability. Now there are three parameters that is used to define information availability. These three parameters are the reliability, the accessibility, and the timeliness. Let us look at each of these parameters one by one. What is reliability? So information should be reliable and correct in all aspects. It is the same as what was stored, and there should be no alteration or corruption of information. The way in which the information was stored, it should be retrieved in the same way. There should not be any alteration or corruption of the information. The information should be reliable and correct in all aspects. So that is what we mean by reliability of information availability. The second parameter that is used to define information availability is accessibility. Information should be accessible at the right place and to the right user. So whenever user wants to access the information, that should be readily available. Also, it should be available to the right users. So it is not like anyone can access anybody's information. Information that is meant to a particular user should be accessible only by that particular user. That is what we mean by accessibility of information availability. And the third parameter that we have to, using which we can define the information availability, is timeliness. So timeliness defines the exact moment or the time window during which the information must be accessible. So it defines the exact moment or the time window when the information must be accessible. If we define the timeliness for an application, say morning 7 to evening 7, this 12 hours time window. So if you define it like that, the information should be available in that time window. That is called as timeliness. So information availability refers to the ability of an infrastructure to function according to the business expectations during its specified time of operation. And information availability can be defined using three parameters: the reliability, the accessibility, and the timeliness. Now let us briefly go through what might be the causes of information unavailability. What might be the factors that leads to information unavailability? Various planned and unplanned incidents result in information unavailability. So as we can see, there are three categories here. We have the planned outages, the unplanned outages, and the disasters. Planned outages include installation or integration or maintenance of new hardware, software upgrades or patches, taking up backups, application and data restores, facility operations such as renovation and reconstruction, as well as refresh and migration of the testing to the production environment. All these things contribute to the planned outages because these will be planned in advance. We will be knowing that the business information will be unavailable while carrying out these planned outage tasks, which may be backup of the data, reconstruction, renovation of the facilities, upgradation of the facilities, and so on. Unplanned outages, and remember, planned outages contribute to the large part of your information unavailability. So about 80% of the time, information unavailability is due to planned outages. About 20% of the time, the information unavailability is caused due to unplanned outages. Now let us see what are these unplanned outages. Unplanned outages, it includes the failure caused by human errors. the failures caused by database corruption, or the failure of physical and virtual components. So it may be caused due to different failures. Failure that is caused due to human errors. People may unintentionally accidentally shut down a system, or unintentionally accidentally delete some data. These are all human errors. Similarly, component failure. Server may crash, hard disk may crash, the network may be down, the routers may be down, there may be some unexpected power failure. So all these things are component failures, as well as database corruption. Data may have been corrupted because of some wrong processing of the data. So all these things are unplanned outages, which contribute to about 20% of the information unavailability. And the last factor that we have is natural or man-made disasters, such as flood, fires, earthquakes, and contamination. So these are natural or man-made disasters which contribute to very less percentage of the information unavailability. So remember, information unavailability may be due to planned outages, unplanned outages, or disasters, which may be natural disasters or man-made disasters. Out of these three things, planned outages contribute to about 80% of the information unavailability, followed by the unplanned outages, which is about 20% reasons or causes for the information unavailability. And lastly, natural and man-made disasters, these are very likely or very less likely to occur. That is, these are the causes for information unavailability. Now let us see what are the consequences of downtime. What are the impact of downtime? Information unavailability or downtime results in the loss of productivity, the loss of revenue, poor financial performance, as well as damage to the reputation of an organization. So loss of productivity includes reduced output per labor, equipment, and capital. So the company is investing some amount of money to pay to their employees. So the information is not available, and employees cannot work. So it causes lack of productivity. So it includes reduced output per labor, as well as the equipments that we have procured, they may be useless if the information is not available, as well as the capital. Loss of revenue includes direct loss, compensatory payments, future revenue loss, billing loss, and investment loss. Poor financial performance affects revenue recognition, cash flow, loss discounts, payment guarantees, credit rating, and stock prices. Damages to the reputation may result in loss of customers, right? So damaged reputation may result in loss of confidence or credibility with the customers or the suppliers, the financial markets, and the business partners. So other possible consequences of downtime include the cost of additional equipment rental over time and extra shipping costs. The business impacts of downtime is the sum of all the losses sustained as a result of a given disruption. Just look at all these factors. So these are the things, or these are the consequences if the information is unavailable. When the information is unavailable, we call it as a downtime. So these are all the impact of downtime or the consequences of downtime. It results in loss of productivity, it results in lost revenue, it results in poor financial performance, it results in damaged reputation or damage of reputation to the organization, as well as the other expenses. So lost productivity, that is the number of employees impacted. Loss in revenues, there may be compensatory payment, billing losses, investment losses, and so on. Damaged reputation, the customers may not be satisfied if the system is down for a long time. So there may be a chance to lose the customers. The suppliers may not supply whatever things that were actually provided by them. So the banks may not provide any financial assistance if there's a damage to the reputation of an organization. Similarly, we may lose some business partners as well. Financial performance, again, the stock price of the organization may drastically come down if the operations are not performed due to downtime. So credit rating may come down, cash flow may come down, and so on. And lastly, the other expenses. So there may be some temporary employees that were recruited to work on some project, and if the data that was required for the project is not available, again payment to those employees is lost. Then we have equipment rental, the overtime costs, extra shipping costs, traveling expenses. All these are the losses that will be incurred as a consequence of downtime or the impact of downtime. An important metric, that is the average cost of downtime per hour, provides a key estimate in determining the appropriate business continuity solutions. Okay, we have a metric called as loss of productivity or average cost of downtime per hour, using which we can estimate the or using which we can determine the appropriate business continuity solution. So average cost of downtime per hour is equal to average productivity per hour or average productivity loss per hour plus average revenue loss per hour. Okay, we can compute, we can have some metric to measure the average cost of downtime per hour, which is measured as the sum of average productivity loss per hour plus the average revenue loss per hour, where productivity loss per hour is equal to the total salary and benefits of all the employees per week divided by the average number of working hours per week. So this gives us the productivity loss per hour. That is the quotient of total salaries and benefits of all employees per week divided by average number of working hours per week. Similarly, average revenue loss per hour is given as the quotient of total revenue of an organization per week divided by average number of hours per week that an organization is open for business. So this is just an equation to calculate the average cost of downtime per hour, which is the sum of average productivity loss per hour plus average revenue loss per hour. So using this average cost of downtime, it provides a key estimate in determining the appropriate business continuity solution. The average cost downtime per hour may also include the estimates of the projected revenue loss due to other consequences such as the damaged reputations and the additional cost of repairing the system. So the average downtime cost per hour, apart from the average productivity loss per hour and the average revenue loss per hour, it may also include the estimates of the projected revenue loss due to other consequences such as damaged reputation and the additional cost of repairing the system. Now let us try to measure information availability. How to measure the information availability? Information availability refers on the availability of the physical and virtual components of a data center. So information availability relies on the availability of both the physical and virtual components of a data center. Failure of these components might disrupt the information availability. A failure is the termination of a component's capability to perform a required function. The component's capability can be restored by performing an external corrective action such as a manual reboot or a repair or replacement of the failed component. Repair involves restoring a component to a condition that enables it to perform a required function. For example, if a server is down, we may have to either manually reboot the server, we may have to repair the server, or at the worst case, we'll have to replace the server with a new server. So repair involves restoring a component to a condition that enables it to perform a required function. Now, proactive risk analysis performed as a part of business continuity planning process considers the component failure rate and the average repair time, which are measured by the mean time between failure or the mean time to repair. We use two terms for productive risk analysis, that is a part of business continuity planning process, that is mean time between failure and mean time to repair. We use the term MTBF for mean time between failures, and we use a term called as MTTR for mean time to repair. Let us see what are these mean time between failure and mean time to repair. Mean time between failure or MTBF, it is the average time available for a system component to perform its normal operations between the failures. So mean time between failures, it is the average time available for a system component, for a system or a component to perform its normal business operation between the failures. It is a measure of a system or the component reliability and is usually expressed in terms of hours. So mean time between failures, it is the average time available for a system or a component to perform its normal operations between the failures. Now what is the mean time to repair or MTTR? Mean time to repair, it is the average time required to repair a failed component. Suppose a component has failed. So what is the average time that is required to repair that component? That is called as the mean time to repair. While calculating the mean time to repair, it is assumed that the fault responsible for the failure is correctly identified and the required spares and personnel are readily available. A fault is a physical defect at the component level which may result in information unavailability. If there is a fault in the system at the component level, it may result in information unavailability. So mean time between failure is the average time available for a system or a component to perform its normal operation between the failures, whereas mean time to repair is the average time that is required to repair a failed component. As we can see in this particular diagram here, so it shows a sequence of events over time. So initially an incident occurs where we have detected some failure in the system. So then we have some incident occurs, then detection of the failure, detection of the fault, diagnosis of the fault, repairing the failed component, and then recovery and restoration. The time from the incident to the restoration, this is called as a mean time to repair. So from incident till the restoration, a particular component was not available. The component will be unavailable. Okay, this is the average time that is required to repair a failed component. That is the mean time to repair. Once the system is restored, time between the restoration and the next failure incident to occur, that is called as the mean time between failures. Time between failures or the uptime. Okay, this duration is called as uptime and this is called as a downtime. So duration between one restoration and one more new failure incident, we call it as a mean time between failures. It's the time available for a system or a component to perform its normal operation between failures. In simple words, it is called as the uptime of the system. Now, information availability is a time period during which a system is in a condition to perform its intended function upon demand. It can be expressed in terms of system uptime and downtime and measured as the amount of percentage of the system uptime. So information availability is equal to system uptime divided by the sum of system uptime and the system downtime, where the uptime is the period of time during which a system is in accessible state. When it is not accessible, it is termed as a system downtime. In terms of mean time between failures and mean time to repair, information availability is calculated as mean time between failures divided by the sum of mean time between failures and mean time to repair. Uptime per year is based on the exact timeliness requirements of a service. So this calculation, that is uptime per year, which is based on the exact timeliness required for the service, this calculation needs to the number of nines. As we can see here, this uptime leads to calculation of the number of nines representation for availability metrics. So this table here lists the approximate amount of downtime allowed for a service to achieve certain levels of nines availability. Okay, for example, if we say that the system uptime is 98% and downtime is 2%, that is if the system is up 98% of the time and the system is down 2% of the time, that indicates downtime per year is 7.3 days and downtime per week is 3 hours 22 minutes. So if we increase the uptime by 1%, downtime per year will be 3.65 days per year and downtime per week will be 1 hour 41 minutes. Similarly, if the uptime is 99.8%, downtime per year will be 17 hours 31 minutes and downtime per week will be 20 minutes 10 seconds. If the uptime is 99.9%, downtime per year is 8 hours 45 minutes. See, out of 365 days, 8 hours 45 minutes the system will be down, and per week 10 minutes 5 seconds the system will be down. If the uptime is 99.99%, that indicates downtime per year is 52 minutes. Out of 365 days, only for 52.5 minutes the system will be down, and for every week, that is in 7 days, the system may be down for only 1 minute. If the uptime is 99.999, the downtime per year is 5.29 minutes and downtime per week is 6 seconds. And lastly, if the uptime is 99.9999%, the system downtime per year will be 31.5 seconds and downtime per week will be 0.6 seconds. The downtime will be so less that it will be hardly recognized by the users. So organizations typically try to keep their downtime as less as possible, and they try to keep their uptime as much as possible in terms of nines. This is called as 5-9 representation, this is 6-9 representation, and so on. So the systems should be up and running most of the time, and the downtime should be as less as possible. So this chart just represents the information availability, that is availability percentage and allowable downtime. This is called as the ninth representation. It lists the approximate amount of downtime allowed for a service to achieve certain levels of nines availability. Right? Just remember, information availability. It's a measure of for what duration is the system up and running. It is given as the quotient of mean time between failure divided by the sum of mean time between failure and the mean time to repair, or it is also given as uptime divided by the sum of uptime and downtime. So what is mean time between failure? Is the average time available for a system or a component to perform its normal operation between the failures, and mean time to repair is the average time required to repair a failed component. Now let us proceed and let us try to understand what are the business continuity terminologies. What are the terms we should make ourselves familiar in order to understand the business continuity. The first term that we need to understand is called as business recovery. The disaster recovery. The first term that we are going to consider is disaster recovery. So this is a coordinate process of restoring the systems, the data and the infrastructure required to support the ongoing business operations after a disaster occurs. So after a disaster has been struck, so the coordinate process or the coordinated process of restoring the systems, the data and the infrastructure required to support the ongoing business operation is called as the disaster recovery. This is done after a disaster has occurred. It is a process of restoring a previous copy of the data and applying logs or other necessary processes to that copy to bring it to a known point of consistency. So disaster recovery, it is a process of restoring a previous copy of the data and applying logs or other necessary processes to that copy to bring it to a known point of consistency. After all recovery efforts are completed, the data is validated to ensure that the data is correct. It generally uses backup technology. Right? So disaster recovery is a coordinated process of restoring the systems, data and the infrastructure required to support the ongoing business operations in the event of a disaster. Restoring previous copy of the data and applying logs to that copy to bring it to a known point of consistency generally implies the use of backup technology. So that is your disaster recovery. Let us also look at the next terminology that we have here, that is called as a disaster restart. This is a process, or disaster restart is a process of restarting business operations with mirrored consistent copies of data and applications. Disaster restart is a process of restarting from the disaster using mirrored consistent copies of data and applications. Generally implies the use of replication technologies. Disaster restart implies the use of replication technologies. The third terminology we have is something called as recovery point objective, or RPO. Recovery point objective is a point in time to which systems and data must be recovered after an outage. Suppose there is an outage, so after which the point in time to which the systems must be recovered, that is called as a recovery point objective, or the RPO. RPO defines the amount of data loss that a business can endure. So it defines what is the data loss that a business can endure and still survive. A large recovery point objective simplifies high tolerance to information loss in a business. So if there is a large RPO that is set for a given organization, that indicates the business can lose more data and still perform its normal operations. Based on the recovery point objective, an organization plans for the frequency with which a backup or replica must be made. So depending upon the value of the recovery point objective, the business organizations determine what is the frequency for taking up the backup or the replica. For example, if the recovery point objective is 6 hours, backup or replicas must be made at least once in every 6 hours. So this diagram here shows the various RPOs and the corresponding solution and the corresponding ideal recovery strategies. Okay, if the recovery point is from seconds to minutes, recovery, the best way to restore the operation recover is using synchronous replication. If the recovery point objective is defined in terms of hours or minutes, we can use something called as asynchronous replication to retrieve to recover the data. If the recovery point objective is between hours and days, we can go for periodic replication to recover the data. And if the recovery point objective is defined in terms of days or weeks, we can go for tape backup. An organization can plan for an appropriate business continuity technology solution on the basis of the RPO it sets. That is what we just discussed. If the RPO is of 24 hours, backups are created at an offsite tape library every midnight. The corresponding recovery strategy is to restore the data from the set of last backup tapes. If the recovery point objective is of 1 hour, shipping database logs to the remote site every hour is required. The corresponding recovery strategy is to recover the database to the point of the last log shipment. If the recovery point objective is in order of minutes, mirroring data asynchronously to a remote site using asynchronous replication. Similarly, if it is in terms of minutes to seconds, we call it as non-zero RPO. So synchronous replication can be used. The next terminology that we have is something called as RTO, or recovery time objective. Recovery time objective is a time within which the systems and the application must be recovered after an outage. RTO, or the recovery time objective, defines the amount of downtime that a business can endure and survive. Businesses can optimize the disaster recovery plan after defining the RTO for a given system. For example, if the recovery time objective is 2 hours, it indicates or it requires a disk based backup because it enables faster restore than a tape backup. However, if the RTO is of 1 week, that is the recovery time objective is 1 week, tape backup will likely meet the requirements. Some examples of recovery time objectives and the recovery strategies to ensure data availability is shown in this particular diagram here. If the recovery objective or recovery time objective is of 72 hours, so best option is to restore from the tapes available at the cold site. If the recovery time objective is 12 hours, so restore from tapes available at the hot site. If the recovery time objective is 5 hours, so use of data vault as a hot site at the hot site. If the recovery time objective is of a few seconds, chase production servers or cluster production servers with bidirectional mirroring, enabling the applications to run at both the sites simultaneously. So as we can see, if the RTO is set between seconds and minutes, we can go for global cluster. If the RTO is set within minutes and hours, we can go for manual migration. If the RTO is set from hours to days, we can go for disk restore. And if it's set from days to week, if the RTO is set from days to week, we can go for tape restore. So these are the two very important terminologies used in business continuity. We have the recovery point objective and recovery time objective. Recovery point objective is a point in time to which the systems and the data must be recovered after an outage. Whereas recovery time objective is a time within which the systems and applications or functions must be recovered after an outage. Recovery point objective specifies the amount of data loss that a business can endure. It defines what is the amount of data that a business can lose and still survive. Whereas recovery time objective defines the downtime that a business can endure and still survive. What is the downtime for which the business can face and still survive? That is called as a recovery time objective. These are the terminologies that will be frequently asked in your examination. You will have to define this. So what is the recovery point objective and recovery time objective? The recovery point objective defines the amount of data loss that a business can endure, whereas the recovery time objective specifies the amount of downtime that a business can endure and still survive. Let's proceed with the other terminologies. The next terminology that we'll be discussing is something called as a data vault. So what is this data vault? Data vault is a repository at a remote site where the data can be periodically or continuously copied. Okay, so it's a repository at the remote site where the data can be periodically or continuously copied either to tape drives or disks, so that there is always a copy at another site. That is called as a data vault. It's a remote site where data can be periodically and continuously copied. The next terminology we have is something called as the hot site. A site where an enterprise's operation can be moved in the event of a disaster, we call it as a hot site. It's a backup site where or a strategic reserved site where the enterprise's operations can be moved in the event of a disaster. If the actual site is stuck with a disaster, we can migrate our operations, the enterprise's operation, to a new site that is called as a hot site. It is a site with required hardware, the operating system, application, and network support to perform business operations, where the equipment is available and running at all times. So this is called as a hot site, a site where an enterprise's operations can be moved in the event of a disaster. The hot site should have the required hardware, the operating system, application, and the network support to perform the business operation when the equipment is available and running at all the times. Let us proceed with the last two business continuity terminologies. There is something called as a cold site. A cold site is a site where an enterprise's operations can be moved in the event of a disaster. But unlike your hot site, this cold site is having minimum IT infrastructure and environmental facilities in place, but these will not be activated. That is hence the name cold site. A site where an enterprise's operations can be moved in the event of a disaster with minimum IT infrastructure and environmental facilities in place but not activated. We call such a site as a cold site. The next terminology that we have is something called as a server clustering. A group of servers and other necessary resources coupled to operate as a single system is called as server clustering. A group of servers and other necessary resources coupled to operate as a single system, we call it as a server cluster. Clusters can ensure high availability and load balancing. Typically in failover clusters, one server runs an application and updates the data, and another server is kept as standby to take over completely as required. So in failover clusters, one server runs an application and updates the data, whereas the other server is kept as a standby to take over completely as required. In more sophisticated clusters, multiple servers may access the data, and typically one or more server is kept as standby. Server clustering provides the load balancing by distributing the application load evenly among the servers within the cluster. So these were some of the business continuity terminologies. So we discussed disaster recovery, disaster restart, recovery point objective, recovery time objective, hot site, data vault, cold site, server clustering, and so on. So these are the business continuity terminologies that we will have to remember. Now let us proceed and understand something called as business continuity planning life cycle or BCP process. So business continuity life cycle, a business continuity planning process. So it involves identifying the critical business functions. It involves collecting data on various business processes within those functions. It also involves something called as the BIA or the business impact analysis, where we are performing the risk analysis such as assessing, prioritizing, mitigating, and managing the risk. And lastly, it's also used for designing and developing plans and disaster recovery plan or contingency plan and disaster recovery plans. Testing, training, and maintenance is also involved as a part of this business continuity planning process. Now let us see what do we mean by business continuity planning life cycle. Business continuity planning life cycle must follow a disciplined approach like any other planning process. Organizations today dedicate specialized resources to develop and maintain the business continuity plans. From the conceptualization to the realization of the business continuity plan, a life cycle of activities can be included. A lifestyle of activities can be defined for the business continuity processes. The business continuity planning includes the 5 stages. It includes establishing objectives, analyzing, design and developing. It involves implementing as well as training, testing, assessing and maintaining. So all these are a part of business continuity planning life cycle. Let us go through each and every phase in a bit more detail. So this is a diagram for the business continuity planning life cycle. Initially, the first step is initializing the objectives, then analyzing, and after that designing and development, and after that we have implementing, and at the last training, testing, assessing and maintaining. And since this is the life cycle, after this it connects back to establishing objective. It is a continuous process. Hence, we use the term called as life cycle here. Now, let us try to understand each and every term that is mentioned in the business continuity planning life cycle in a bit more detail. Let us first see the first phase that we have here is establishing objectives. Here we determine the business continuity requirements. So, what are the requirements for the business continuity that is determined as a part of establishing objectives phase of your business continuity planning life cycle? So, here the estimate, we are also estimating the scope and budget to achieve the requirements. So, what is the budget to meet the requirement? We may have a bunch of very large list of requirements, but whether it can fit within our budget, that is estimated here. And what is the scope of these requirements, that is also done, estimated as a part of establishing objectives. So, the third step is select a business continuity team by considering the subject matters experts from all the areas, whether internal or external. So, while we are establishing the objectives, so a business continuity team should be selected by considering the subject matters experts from all areas of the business, whether internal or external. And lastly, in this phase, business continuity policies will be established. Create business continuity policies. The last phase here is to establish or to create the business continuity policies. So, in establishing objectives, we are determining the business continuity requirements, estimating the scope and budget to achieve the requirements, selecting a business continuity team by considering the subject matter experts from all areas of the business, and create business continuity policies. The next step in our business continuity planning life cycle is analyzing. So, in analyzing, collect information on the data profiles, business processes, infrastructure support, dependency and frequency of using business infrastructure. So, identify critical critical business needs and assign recovery priorities. Create a risk analysis for financial or for critical areas and mitigation strategies. So, risk analysis is done as a part of this analysis. Risk analysis is done for critical areas and mitigation strategies. In analyzing, we are also going to conduct something called as BIA or business impact analysis. So, analyzing also involves creating cost and benefit analysis based upon the consequences of the data unavailability. And lastly, we evaluate the options. We evaluate the options. So, these are the things that we are going to analyze as a part of the second phase of the business continuity life cycle, that is analyzing. So, collect information on data files, business processes, information support, dependencies, and frequency of using these using the business infrastructure. So, in this analyzing, we should also identify critical business needs and assign recovery priorities. So, it also involves creating a risk analysis and for analyzing and mitigation strategies. It's also used to conduct the business impact analysis (BIA). It's also used to create a host. It's also used to create a cost and benefit analysis based on the consequences of data unavailability. And lastly, it's also used to evaluate the options that are available. The next phase in a business continuity planning life cycle is designing and developing. So, it involves defining the team structure and assign individual roles and responsibilities. So, it involves defining the team structure and assign the team So, designing and developing involves defining the team structure and assign individual roles and responsibilities. For example, different teams are formed for activities such as emergency response, damage assessment, and infrastructure and application recovery. Design data protection strategies to develop infrastructure. So, data protection strategies are designed as a part of this designing and developing. So, it is also used to develop contingency scenarios. So, it also involves emergency response procedures and detailed recovery and restart procedures. All these things are involved as a part of designing and developing a software. The next phase in the business continuity planning life cycle is implementing. Let us see what is this implementing. So implement risk management and mitigation procedures that include backup, replication and management of resources. So implementing involves risk management and mitigation procedures that include backup, replication and management of resources. Implementing involves preparing the disaster recovery sites that can be utilized if a disaster affects the primary data center. So prepare the disaster recovery sites at the unutilized that can be utilized if the disaster affects the primary data center. So it's also used to implement redundancy for every resource in the data center to avoid single points of failures. So this implementing also we need to consider what are the things that can be made redundant in order to avoid the single points of failures. And the last part of your business continuity planning life cycle is training, testing, assessing and maintaining. So it involves to train the employees who are responsible for backup and replication of business critical data on a regular basis or whenever there is a modification in the business plan. So it also involves to train the training of the employees on an emergency response procedures when disasters are declared. It also involves train the recovery team on the recovery procedures based on the contingency scenarios. So it also used to perform damage assessment processes and review the recovery plans. It also involves assessing the business continuity plan regularly to evaluate its performance and identify its limitations. So it's also used to assess the performance requirements reports or performance reports and identify the limitations. So update to the business continuity plans and recovery restart procedures to reflect the changes within the data center. So one more very usual, very important task that is carried out in this particular phase of training, testing, accessing and maintenance. So update the business continuity plans and the recovery restart procedures to reflect the regular changes within a given data center. So these are the different activities in a business continuity planning life cycle. A very, very important exam question for the exam that was frequently asked. We have establishing the objectives, analyzing, designing and developing, implementing, training, testing, assessing and maintaining. Right? Now let us try to understand what do we mean by failure analysis. Failure analysis involves analyzing both physical and virtual components to identify systems that are responsible to a single point of failure and implementing fault tolerance. So failure analysis involves analyzing both physical and virtual infrastructure components to identify systems that are susceptible to single point of failures and implementing fault tolerance. Let us see what do we mean by single point of failure. A single point of failure refers to the failure of a component that can terminate the availability of the entire system or an IT service. So a single point of failure refers to the failure of a component that can terminate the availability of the entire system or IT service. As shown in this particular diagram on the screen, it depicts a system setup in which an application running on the virtual machine, that is the VM, provides an interface to the client and performs the input-output operations. The client is connected to the server through the IP network. As we can see, we have the IP switch here, and the server is connected to the storage array using the FC switch or the fiber channel connection. In a setup in which each component must function as required to ensure data availability, the failure of a single component or a single physical component or virtual component causes unavailability to the application. This failure analysis is disruption of the ongoing operation. So that is what we call as single points of failure. So in this particular diagram, it depicts a system in which an application is running on a virtual machine, provides an interface to the client and performs the input-output operations. The client is connected to the server through the IP network and the server is connected to the storage array using the FC switch or the fiber channel connection. So in a setup in which each component must function as required to ensure data availability, the failure of a single component or the virtual component can cause unavailability of an application. This failure results in disruption of the business operations. Now to mitigate the single points of failure, we need to resolve the single points of failures. Systems are designed with redundancy such that the system fails only if all the components in the redundancy group fail. The systems must be designed in such a way that must be designed with redundancy. There may be more than one resources such that the system fails only if all the components in the redundancy group fails. Now this ensures that the failure of a single component does not affect availability. So if you are relying on single resources, so there is a chance of single points of failures. To avoid that, we can have multiple resources or redundant resources, which ensures that the failure of a single component does not affect availability. Data centers follow stringent guidelines to implement fault tolerance for uninterrupted information availability. So data centers follow stringent guidelines to implement fault tolerance for uninterrupted information availability. Careful analysis is performed to eliminate every single point of failures. So we need to carefully analyze. So careful analysis is performed to eliminate every single point of failure. As we can see in this diagram, we have a client, we have IP network, there are two servers. Every server is having its own NAS or network, the redundant ports or the FC switches, which are used to connect to the storage array. Now what might be the single points of failures in this particular diagram? So what might be the single points of failures in this diagram? So let us see what might be the single points of failures in this particular diagram here. So configuration of redundant host bus adapter at the server is used to mitigate the single host bus adapter failure. It's used to configuration of the redundant host bus adapter at the server is used to mitigate the single host bus adapter failure. Configuration of the network interface cards ensure or the network interface cards teaming at the server allows protection against the single physical NIC failure. Rather than just relying on one NIC, if there are multiple NICs, even if one of the NIC fails, the system can work as per the business continuity requirements. So configuration of NIC teaming at server allows grouping of two or more physical network interface cards and treating them as a single logical device. With NIC teaming, it is one of the underlying physical network interface cards fails or its NIC teaming eliminates the single point of failure associated with the single point network interface cards. Suppose if one of the network interface cards fails, if you are having redundant network interface cards, the business can perform their normal operations using the extra or the redundant network interface cards or the NIC at the server. Configuration of redundant switches to account for a switch failure. So having more than one switch facilitates if one of the switch fails, we can continue the business operation using the surviving switch. Configuration of multiple storage array ports to imagine wrapper or to imagine port failure. Configuration of redundant switch ports to account for a switch failure. Configuration of multiple storage ports to mitigate a port failure. RAID and hot spare configurations to ensure continuous operations in the name of the event disk failure. Implementation of redundant storage array at the remote site to mitigate the impact of data loss, mitigate the impact of local site failures. Implementing server clustering, a full clustering, a fault tolerance mechanism whereby two of it two or more of the servers in a cluster room access the same data volumes. Otherwise, cluster servers exchange a heartbeat to inform each other about their health. If we use the servers or hyperserver cells or hypervisors fails, the other server or the hypervisor can take up the workload. Okay, so implementing a virtual machine fault tolerance mechanism ensures business continuity in the event of a server failure. So this technique creates duplicate copies of each of the virtual machines and another server, so that when a virtual machine failure occurs, when a virtual machine failure is detected, a duplicate virtual machine can be used for the failover. So these two virtual machines are kept in the synchronization with the dryer with each other in the order to perform successful failover. So what we can do is, in order to improve the fault tolerance, we should avoid single points of failures and have redundant components. The next, let us next discuss what are the different business continuity technology solutions. The following are the solutions and the supporting technologies that enables business continuity and uninterrupted data availability. First one is fault tolerant configuration using avoiding single points of failures. The second option that we have is called as multi-pathing software. The third option is backup and replication. We can either perform backup, normal backup, either we can perform no local replication, or we can perform remote replication. Let us look at what we mean by multi-pathing software. Configuration of multiple paths increases the data availability. Even with multiple paths, if a path fails input output will even if the multiple paths, if a path fails IO, will not reroute unless the system recognizes that it as an alternate path. But multipathing software helps to recognize and utilize the alternate input output path to the data. Multipathing software also manages the load balancing by distributing the input outputs to all the available paths. Intelligently manages the paths to derive the data paths to device by sending intelligently manages the paths to a device by sending input output down the optimal path based on the load balancing and the failover policy setting for a given device. And lastly, it also takes into account path usage and availability before deciding the path through which it has to send the input output. If a path to a device fails, input output the device, if a path to a device fails, it automatically reroutes the input output to an alternative path. So this is how the multipathing software works. So configuration of multiple paths increases data availability. Even with multiple paths, if a path fails, input output will not reroute unless the system recognizes itself. Multipathing software helps to recognize and utilize alternate path to the data. Multipathing software also manages the load balancing by distributing the input outputs to all the available active paths. Intelligently manages the path to a device by sending input output down the optimal path based on the load balancing and failure policy setting for a given device. Multipathing also takes into account path usage and available before deciding the path through which to send the IO. So if a path to the device fails, it automatically reroutes the input output to an alternate path. Multipathing software also takes into account path usage and availability before deciding the path through which to send to. If the path to a device fails, it automatically reroutes the input output to an alternative path. In a virtual environment, the multipathing is enabled either by using hypervisor's built-in capability or by running a third-party software module called as a hypervisor. So that is about your multipathing software. The next term that we need to remember is BIA, or business impact analysis. Business impact analysis identifies that which businesses, units, operations and processes are essential to thrive the survival of a modern business. So business continuity, business impact analysis evaluates the financial and operational and service impacts of a disruption to essential business processes. The business impact analysis process leads to an report dealing with incidents and their impact over the different times. The business impact analysis may be specified in terms of BIA based on the potential impacts associated with the downtime. Businesses can prioritize and implement countermeasures to mitigate the likelihood of such disruptions. So these are the things that is involved by the business impact analysis. Determine the business areas. For each business area, identify the key business processes or its operation. Determine the attributes of the family process. Determine the attributes of the business process in terms of applications, databases and hardware and software requirements. Estimate the cost of failures for each business process. Calculate the maximum tolerable output outage and define the RTO and RPO for each business purpose, each business process. Establish the communication resources required for the operation of the business processes. Determine recovery strategies and the cost for implementing them. Optimize the backup and business recovery strategies based on the business priorities. Analyze the current state of the business continuity readiness and optimize the future business continuity planning. Now let us come to the last part of this business continuity, where we are going to look at the business continuity solutions, technology solutions. The first technology that we have is the backup. Now, what is backup? Data backup is a predominant method of ensuring data availability. The frequency of backup is determined by the RPO, RTO and other frequencies of extra charge the data changes. Frequency of the data changes. Whenever there is a change in the data needs to be backed up depending upon the frequency. Second business continuity solution that we have is a local replication. Data can be replicated to a separate location within the same storage array. The replica is used to independently for other business operations. Replicas can also be used for restoring the operation if the data corruption occurs. And lastly, the third business continuity technology solution that we have is called as a remote replication, where the data in the storage array can be replicated to another storage array located at the remote site. If the storage array is lost due to a disaster, business operations can be started from anywhere from the remote storage array. So these are the different business continuity technology solutions. This is a part of the business continuity terminologies. So with this, we have reached the end of this particular chapter. Let us briefly summarize what are the things we just discussed. We saw what is business continuity. Business continuity is preparing for, responding to and recovering from an application outage that affects the business operations. So then we saw what do you mean by information availability. So information availability refers to the ability of an infrastructure to function according to the business expectations during its specified time of operation. We discussed the causes of information unavailability. There are three major causes: the planned outages, unplanned outages and disasters, which may be natural or man-made. So we also discussed what are the consequences or impacts of downtime to a business. It results in lost productivity, damaged reputation, lost revenue, financial performance and other expenses. So then we defined what we mean by mean time to recover and mean time to repair, mean time between failures and mean time to repair. Mean time between failures, the average time available for a system or a component to perform its normal operations between the failures. Mean time to repair, it's average time required to repair a failed component. That is called as the mean time to repair. Then we discuss the different business continuity terminologies. So we saw what is disaster recovery. It's a process, coordinated process of restoring systems, data and the infrastructure required to support the ongoing business operations in the event of a disaster. Then we discuss disaster restart. It's the process of restarting from disaster using mirrored consistent copies of the data and the applications. Then we discuss two very important terms, recovery point objective and recovery time objective. Recovery point objective is a point in time to which the systems and the data must be recovered after an outage. It specifies the amount of data loss that a business can endure. Similarly, recovery time objective, it is a time within which systems, applications or functions must be recovered after an outage. Amount of downtime that a business can endure and survive is determined by this recovery time objective. Then we also discuss two more terms, data vault and hot site. A repository as a remote site where data can be periodically copied so that there is always a copy of data at another site. Such a repository or a remote site is called as a data site. Again, we have something called as a hot site, a site where an enterprise's operations can be moved in the event of a disaster. That is what we call as a hot site. Then we discuss cold site. It's a site where an enterprise operation can be moved in the event of a disaster, but with minimum IT infrastructure and environmental facilities in place. Then we discuss something called a server clustering, which is a group of servers and other necessary resources coupled to operate as a single system. Clusters can ensure different high availability and requirements and load balancing. So this is what we have discussed, and then we discuss what we mean by business continuity planning process, and we discuss business continuity planning life cycle. As shown in this diagram, there are 5 phases: establishing objectives, analyzing, designing and developing, implementing, and then followed by training, testing, assessing and maintaining. So all these are the 5 factors or the 5 stages in the business continuity planning life cycle. And after that we discuss the business failure analysis, which is used to determine what might be the bottlenecks in the system or single points of failures in a given system. A single point of failure refers to the failure of a component that can terminate the availability of the entire system or the IT services. So in order to resolve the single points of failures for any instance, systems should be designed with redundancy, that is with multiple components. Data centers should follow stringent guidelines to implement fault tolerance for uninterrupted information availability. So having redundant components ensure that the failure of a single component does not affect the data availability. Then we saw what might be the single points of failure in a given system. We may have a bottleneck if there is a single switch, if you are relying on single servers, if you are relying on a single storage devices. All these things are single points of failures. If one of these components fail, the entire systems will be unusable. So that is why we have redundant components, redundant cluster servers, we have redundant switches, we have redundant arrays, we have redundant ports, redundant paths and redundant networks as well. So having redundancy allows us to considerably avoid the single points of failures. And after that we discuss the business continuity technology solutions. So we can either go for fault tolerant configuration or use multipathing software or go for backup and replication. So in multipathing software, configuration of multipath increases the data availability. Rather than just relying on a single path, if there is multiple path, it increases the data availability. So it also takes into account the path usage and the availability before deciding the path through which to send the input output. Then we discuss what do you mean by business impact analysis. It identifies which business units, operations and processes are essential to the survival of a business. Right, so these are the things that is included as a part of business impact analysis. Then we discuss the business continuity terminologies, technology solutions. 3 major solutions we have: the backup, local replication and the remote replication. With this, let us conclude this particular chapter, that is Introduction to Business Continuity. Thank you.